murder and destruction to our community. The dedicated San Diego Police Department detectives, DA prosecutors followed this paper trail piece by piece and built a case where the grand jury indicted, and these individuals have begun their journey today to be held accountable, with many of them arraigned already this morning, and many more will be arraigned this afternoon. 16 of the 17 are in custody. The scam was fairly simple. A 2021 tax form included a line item intended for COVID relief. This particular form, which is form number 7202, it's entitled Credits for Sick Leave and Family Leave for Certain Self-Employed Individuals. It was meant to bring relief for those who are self-employed and take sick leave, or they are there to care for family members. This system was set up where it had a maximum of 60 days of relief that can be given. However, this number was manipulated, where many filed these fraudulent reports, inputting days ranging from 790 days, we all know there are not that many days in a year, to up to 15,000 days. As a result of the fraudulent entries, the returns garnered between $97,000 and $229,000. The various defendants are charged with 81 felony counts, including conspiracy to commit this crime, filing a fraudulent tax return, assisting in the filing of a fraudulent tax return, receiving stolen property, money laundering, an aggravated white-collar fraud, a fraud in excess of $100,000, and for some, that the fraud was committed to benefit their street gang. I want to pause for a moment on this $1.7 million that were lost to our community. This is not a victimless crime. There are taxpayers that are families that are working very hard every year to meet their tax obligations. In addition, just recently, we learned that VOCA funding, which is federal funding for crime victims, is going to be 1.5 million less for San Diegans who have suffered the harm, some of it from these gangs. That the federal government doesn't have the money to pay our crime victims for their trauma, for their burial expenses. This is why this is serious. This is not a victimless crime. When gang members that are perpetrating destruction get $1.7 million in order to perpetrate more destruction, and our victims get $1.5 million less dollars to treat their trauma and pain. It's unacceptable. Like I said, their arraignments are taking place today in San Diego in Superior Court. If convicted of all the charges, depending on their criminal record and involvement, the sentence range would be between 16 months in jail to life in state prison. At least one of these defendants is also in custody on a murder. The San Diego Police Department's Financial Crime Division was the lead investigative agency on the case, and prosecutors worked closely with the East County Gang Task Force along with San Diego Police Department. Our two expert prosecutors from the Gang Division and Economic Fraud Division, Ted Fiorito and Vanessa Gerard, worked tirelessly on this case, understanding that this kind of fraud hurts everybody, and especially when it's in the hands of gangsters that they can use to purchase more guns, more drugs, sell more women in human trafficking, sell more drugs that poison our community. The fraud was discovered during the course of a homicide investigation which turned out to be very successful, with one defendant already convicted of murder and others awaiting trial. When law enforcement found the notice of an IRS refund on one of the phones, you could see it on the screen there. While they were really focused on this murder investigation, they didn't miss the importance of this unusual phone evidence. The murder case, like I said, is pending. And here with me is San Diego Police Department Assistant Chief Paul Conley, also Captain Manuel Del Toro, who led the investigation side. I want to thank Chief Scott Wall for all of the efforts of his department, and I'm going to ask Chief Conley to give you more details.
Thank you and good afternoon. I'd like to introduce a couple people I have up here with me today. First, I'd like to introduce Commander Grubbs and Captain Del Toro, part of the leadership team that oversees many of our incredible investigative units. I also have Homicide Detective Brian Cashouty, who initiated this investigation and turned it over to our Economics Crimes Unit. And I also have Detective Sergeant Ed Lopez and Detective Mike Shabandi from our Economic Crimes Unit, who took the lead on this investigation. I'd like to first say thank you to District Attorney Stephan for her partnership and support in bringing these criminals to justice. As District Attorney Stephan said, this case is a great example of the extent that street gangs will go to fund their criminal organizations. This case stemmed from the 2022 investigation into the homicide of Trayvon Stewart Jordan. During the investigation, the San Diego Police Department's homicide unit served several search warrants, to include one on Stephen Pittman's residence. During the search warrant of Pittman's residence, Homicide Detective Brian Cashouty located concerning financial information indicative of an IRS tax fraud scheme with significant financial loss. Due to the enormity of the situation, our homicide unit reached out to the San Diego Police Department's Economic Crimes Unit Detective Sherbani to take the lead, and the San Diego District Attorney's Office for assistance in the fraud investigation that lasted 10 months. This joint investigation took great collaboration and coordination to put a stop to tax fraud scheme, leading to the indictment of 17 suspects. Yesterday, several San Diego Police Department units and partner agencies conducted 11 premise search warrants and without incidents took 14 of the 17 suspects into custody. Today, 16 of the 17 suspects in this case are in custody. I'd like to take a moment to thank the San Diego District Attorney's Office, the San Diego Sheriff's Office, the Riverside County Sheriff's Office, the Las Vegas Metropolitan Police Department, multiple San Diego Police Department units, the FBI's East County Gang Task Force, and the Violent Crimes Task Force. All these partners played a role in bringing this tax fraud scheme to an end.
Do you have any questions?
I have one. I was wondering if you have more information about these gangs, where they operate in San Diego. How these gangs, how do you know about these gangs?
I mean, these are well-established gangs that are, what is unusual is usually gangs work in their own lane, but where it comes to this fraud, we have multiple gangs, and we have really rival gangs. The Crips and the Bloods are involved in this fraud. This is similar to the way that human trafficking operates, where different gangs will still work together to accomplish the greedy goal of making money.
They were more like in the north of the county or more south?
They were, do you want to address it?
Sure.
East and everywhere, yeah.
Yeah, most of them are located east, southeast part of the city of San Diego.
Chief, could we all say from you, we heard from District Attorney Stephan about how this is not a victimless crime, and could we also get you to share your personal feelings about this kind of crime and how it really does affect people in society?
It's certainly does. You know, we did have gang members involved in this, but you know, criminals will commit all types of crimes and do whatever they can do to profit in any way that they can. And as District Attorney Stephan said, this is not a victimless crime. We have citizens all across this country who do their due diligence to pay their taxes and pay what they owe to the government, but yet we have organizations like this who are literally stealing that money and taking that money out of the pockets of victims and that can use them through different programs.
And even they can put more than 60 days on the process. It was because it's a virtual system and they can put 70, 90 days. They like take advantage of the virtual system, or why they can put this amount of days, as you say, we have in a year 365, what they can put more days in the
So
process.
this is the form, and on the form, right on it, it says you cannot file any more than 60 days. So they use this form that says you can't file more than 60 days, and in fact, 15,000 is the limit. But there was no system by which when they put, 800 days, 15,000 days, which is well beyond a year, that it was caught. And when the amount being submitted is 200,000 and the limit is 15,000, that wasn't caught either by the systems. So whatever systems there were, they failed. And they failed the American people, and they failed us here in San Diego.
You're talking about the IRS system.
Correct.
Have you been able to talk to federal officials about potential that this could be widespread nationwide?
We are really hopeful that I'm not going to discuss private discussions, but I'm hopeful that this hard work that was done by everyone is really put an alert in the nation. It's the first type of case that we've seen being done. It takes a lot of effort, but we wanted to be clear about the fact that we're not going to allow gang members to just get more guns and drugs using federal money. And we're hoping that this will create a system where something like this doesn't happen in the future.
Were you able to find out exactly how they figured this out, this loophole in the system?
I don't know exactly where the genesis is. We know that Defendant Pittman started with this and began, recruiting and paying for other gang members to recruit others to file these kind of tax returns, instructing them on exactly how to do it, how to fill it out, but as you can see, it's not very sophisticated to fill it out, and the fraud is blatant on the face of the form. You have the number of days exceed the number of days of 60 days, and the amount way exceeds the amount allowed by law.
Are you able to recoup some of that money?
A lot of it was already spent. There's some cash was recouped. We're going to keep working on trying to recoup, whether it's cars that they bought or the jewelry that was recovered. But some of it was blown in Vegas and different places. It didn't go into supporting, the future of their family or anything that does any good for our community.
For the four defendants that were mentioned, Pittman being one of the four or fifth, there's four defendants that you identified as part of this homicide investigation. Are they also concurrently part of the fraud investigation?
Not Pittman. On the search warrant recovered guns, and he's charged with guns and violations of illegal guns. But one of the defendants, who is named Hale, is charged with the murder that's pending in January.
He's the only one that isn't in both.
In both cases, but there is another 3 defendants and one that was convicted.
Okay.
Yeah.
And this person, Stephen Pittman, do you recognize him as the leader of one of the gangs or both of them?
I think he'd be considered the leader.
Yeah, if not the leader, very heavily involved.
Is that a picture of Pittman with a Rolex? Right here? Just wondering.
Yes.
That's him, so he's kind of the one who spawned this whole scheme.
into a little more depth about just like the jewelry, the watches, the stuff that was recovered, and what may happen with that stuff, with those things?
Well, if the conviction is successful, so we will wait as evidence in the case, and at some point, if it's released and can go into a restitution fund to benefit victims, that would be our request eventually. But as you could see, this is what you have, you know, glorifying gang culture, gang monikers. It's not a good story, but the best part of the story is that we fought back and were able to bring accountability and hopefully bring a message to the nation to make sure that we protect this money so it can be preserved for people who need it, for crime victims and other families who really did suffer and needed this money.
Was it mainly jewelry and watches, the stuff we see in the pictures? Was that mainly what they?
I think there was like gambling in Vegas and many other things, you know, guns, drugs, all of those things that we can't capture. Yes. And I want to make sure that I also introduce Bob Hickey, who's the chief of our gang division. All right. Thank you so much.